Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, thank you for having me, Gertrude. This is great. My name's Sarah Makris. I'm a career success coach and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I've lived here all my life, and I see that you're in Melbourne as well, which is great. So you know that one of the things about Melbourne is this crazy weather that we get, 4 seasons in one day. Essentially, I am an executive coach and I manage C-suite reputations. What I'm obsessed is about helping accomplished professionals to build powerful personal brands, and I've really done that for most of my career. I've been in business for the last 5 years, but I've actually spent my whole career in the corporate world prior to that doing just that. So when I was at school, I finished school in Melbourne as well, and I really wasn't much of a student, I've got to say. I sort of blame it on immaturity, I think. I don't really think I knew what I wanted to do, and so therefore I really didn't apply myself much at school. So when it came to finishing school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I started an arts degree and pretty much stopped after 3 months and realised that just wasn't for me. But what I loved doing was working, and so I started working for a large I suppose medium-sized retailer, and within about 6 months, I was managing one of their stores, and then on top of that, I went, and then within a couple of years, I was managing their estate and being put into really poor performing stores to make them get back on track. So I really found that I loved leading people. And I was also managing their communications across the state. So, and leading about, it's probably a couple of hundred at least people, which I loved. And I think that's where I got that real sort of passion for helping people. But I really didn't know much at that stage. I hadn't really had a lot of experience, so it was sort of very much winging it. And then I sort of got bored of that. Realized actually, I want more than this. I want more than what I'm doing. And I was asked to join a startup company, which was fascinating at the time because that was in 1997, I think. So the internet was pretty young, and I was working for a company called Wishlist, and it was a fabulous experience. I was the fourth or fifth employee. It was started by a fabulous, smart family here in Melbourne, and we had this little shop front across the road from the Victoria Market. And my job was sort of lots of different things, from sourcing products to writing copy for the website. And it was a really great insight into not only the entrepreneurial journey, but also the internet at that stage. So I stayed there for a while, and then I realised, I really want to go back and study now. So I went back and studied public relations, which was something that I had sort of thought about, but I didn't really know much about it. So that was great. So I finished off, started working there. Now, before I, within about a year and a half, I landed a role for a large corporate in Australia. And at the time, their name was Coles-Meyer. And it's now, now both of those companies are split up. So it's Coles, and then there's Meyer over here, and Coles is over here, and it's owned by Wesfarmers. Coles is. So, but at that time, all of these big, massive brands were together. So your Kmart, your Coles, Officeworks, all the liquor brands, Target, everything was underneath that. And I joined their public relations team, which was part of the corporate communications team. An amazing experience, fell in love with what I did, loved the action and the passion, like the urgency of everything, and quickly went into but what I did realize with PR was it wasn't going to really kind of get me that excited, because I spent a year promoting things like in consumer public relations, promoting things like frozen pizzas and stuff like that, and that just wasn't me. So very quickly I moved into the corporate communications side, which was issues management, investor relations, government, strategic communications and leadership. And I spent basically my whole career working with senior executives on their executive team to manage reputations. So that was either the leadership team reputations, the company reputations, with those four stakeholders: the investor market, the government, the internal, and media. So that was really what I loved, and I just loved that time that I had there. And then I moved to another company, one of the big banks in Australia, and took on another role within corporate communications, another big area as well. And I would do things like manage the reputations of CEOs and coming and going. So if there was a new CEO coming on board or a new managing director, then I would work on things like that. And it was fabulous. But I also worked with the next level down of the general managers, or sort of who were in the C-suite of particular divisions, and they didn't have the same support that was given to the CEOs or the managing directors. So, the ones that really excelled were really good at building their profile, and that's what I learned in that time. But not everybody had the confidence to do it, or the clarity of what to do. So when I had children, I left the banks and moved and sort of took time off. And it was a really challenging time, I would say, because I really lost a lot of myself. And I started a fashion blog, which I loved, but I lost that passion that I had, which I loved from the corporate world. But I wasn't going to go back to that, because it was not going to fit my family. And I hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about what that would mean when I stopped to have children. So after doing a few years of writing a fashion blog, which was great because it kind of kept me really creative and writing, but then I realized, I actually want to go back and do what I was doing, but I want to do it for myself. And so I set up my coaching business, and I love helping executives to build their profile now. But one of the things that I had to do in order to start that business was actually acknowledge that I hadn't done a very good job of it when I was in the corporate world, even though the expectation was far lower at that time. And I was very much a behind the scenes person. It wasn't something that was expected of people at that time as much, unless you had a media profile or you had to front investors. But now it's expected of, any serious professional, and to have a brand and to have a profile in the market, to be seen as a leader in order to progress. So now I help them do that. And at that time, I thought, okay, well, I better start building my own profile and building my networks. And so now I have a profile in business, a profile in the industry. I have a successful business where I get to help executives do the same thing, but it's all the things that I've had to do myself. So that's been great. And yeah, so that's pretty much my story in terms of my journey. And it's been a fun ride.
Amazing story. Thanks so much, Sarah. When I looked at your profile on LinkedIn, I could see how important it is to really brand yourself so that you stand out. Now, as you know, this podcast is called the Diversity Connector. More and more women are forging into spaces where they normally didn't exist.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance of building a personal brand for executives.
So it is incredibly important. And the way I describe it is, there's a lot of things at work people can prejudge us, whether it's our age, whether it's our experience, whether it's the company we've worked for, whether it's our gender, anything that, people might have a preconceived view on. And what I love about building your profile means that none of that matters. It's about putting yourself out there. They can't just judge you on a piece of paper and say, oh, she's, too old, or make assumptions about that. So there's that. But also too, when you build a profile, you're actually sharing your value and what you can bring to the table. And if you can, identify that and be really clear on it and build it around where you want to go, then you actually get to where you want to go a lot quicker. So what I find is I always start with my clients around, where do you want to go? Because there's no point in building your profile unless you have a clear direction of what you want to achieve. Yes. And but yeah, if nobody knows the value that you bring, it's very hard to kind of keep progressing and achieve what you want to achieve.
So if we talk about, diversity in executive leadership, with the rising importance of diversity, how do you address this through your Shine Career Acceleration Coaching Program for executives? Yeah.
So one of the things that I love to do is, well, first of all, we have to identify where we want to go. What do you want your life to look like for the next 5 to 10 years? What are those goals? What are those milestones? And then we look at, what makes you you? What is the uniqueness of you? And one of the activities I do is ask people to sort of look. We do like a bit of a brand audit. So, where are you today? How do people view you? What's the value they see from you? And then we get all these different sort of elements that make sure that that's authentically you. So you're not just, putting a false brand out into the market. It's all about you and owning everything about you and not being afraid to sort of, one thing I've learned is that everybody has something that they feel uncomfortable about, everybody. And it doesn't matter how successful you are, there's always something. And, so and is that the stuff that you want to, that's the stuff you have to work on. So from my perspective, I think it's about owning who you are, being authentic about it, and also being very strategic about how you show up.
Yeah, it is all about being strategic. So what are the biggest challenges that senior executives face when trying to transition to an even higher executive level? And how does your program help them to overcome it?
Sure. So what I find is most people, when you want to get to a certain level, sometimes there's a few different situations. So sometimes you have had a career where you've had lots of taps on the shoulders and it's all been fine, and you've just had to, you've sort of never really had to go for an interview because your mentors have been there to sort of push you along. And then all of a sudden they retire and you sort of sit there thinking, well, hang on, where am I? Hang on, where am I? How did I get here? And how do I make sure that and they start feeling that they're not being seen. So that's sort of one scenario. Another scenario is that you've got somebody who might have had worked for an organization. They've had a massive job, so lots of influence, and then all of a sudden they've lost their job. They've got, they've been made redundant. So so all of those things, what I find is people can lack confidence. They can lack clarity on where they want to go next. So those, those two things are really important, and also knowledge. So, so it's really about lacking visibility, momentum, and clarity. And what I do is help them get really clear on what it is that they want to do, and where they want to be, and also how do they sort of build a brand that positions them at the right level? Because often what happens is people are not positioned correctly. And I often get this from people who often say to me, I'm getting job offers, but they're at the same level I'm at. I'm already at this level. I don't want another job at the same level, in a different company. Yeah. And that's often positioning. So they're not positioning themselves correctly. So yeah, positioning, lack of confidence, and clarity would be the three that, the three big challenges. And I think another one would be a lot of people have so much knowledge and experience, but they're just not, and all these thought bubbles. One of my clients described it to me the other day. It's like I've got all these bubbles in my head of thoughts and things that I want to share or I could share, but I don't really know how to package them up.
Yes.
And that's part of the process that I take my clients through as well, because I want them to feel confident. And in order for them to build their profile, they have to be out there sharing and demonstrating their knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are the most common mistakes that you see executive making when they're trying to build their personal brand, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple. One is doing it without a goal and a clear strategic plan. So they're just sort of out there throwing paint at the wall and sort of thinking, okay, well, will that stick? And that sort of also it also comes into the content side of things. So when you don't have a reason, or you haven't got a strategic goal, for example, you haven't got a goal and then don't have a strategy, then what happens is your content lacks direction and purpose. So there's no point in being on LinkedIn 3 days a week and posting content if it's not aligned to where you want to go and what your brand is and what you want to be known for. So that would be the main one. And I think just taking charge of, your brand. So not building a brand attached to your company is another one. So it's great to have a profile, but it will come and a brand, but you will travel, that brand will travel with you. So if you put your brand too much in the bucket of, okay, this is the company I work for, then that is a bit of a risk as well.
Yeah. You're really limiting yourself if you do that.
Yeah, but it does happen a lot, especially if you've been with the organization a long time.
A long time, yeah. So in today's digital world or digital age, how essential is it for executives to have a public profile? And what platforms or mediums do you recommend they focus on?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely essential because, if you think about two candidates going for the same job, both of them are pretty good in an interview. Both got really strong resumes, very strong, very clear. So everything's tick, tick, tick. And then the recruiter or the company go to the LinkedIn page. Yes. And one's got a fantastic LinkedIn page, lots of, engagement of followers. Maybe they've got a newsletter. Maybe that, they've got loads of connections. And the other one's missing, not even optimized. It's pretty obvious who's going to get the job then, isn't it? So that's sort of why it's important, but also because times that, we don't know what tomorrow brings. So it's really about career insurance as well. Being really sure about, okay, look, I know what I've kind of, it gives you control of your future as well, but it also ensures that you've got little boats of opportunities around should the worst happen.
I guess it's all about, how can they avoid these little pitfalls?
Be really clear on where you're going. Be really strategic around your content, and work out what you want to be known for and what do you need to be known for in order to attract the people that could potentially give you your next role or that bigger role. The other way of building your profile, so LinkedIn, absolutely, it's the biggest professional platform. So if you're a professional, you want to be on LinkedIn. Ground zero, really important. Next thing, I love podcasts. I think it's fantastic to get on podcasts and share your knowledge and chat and create your own podcast, even if that's something that you're interested in. And stages are fantastic as well. I think, now after the pandemic, we're starting to see a lot more of that happening as well. But I don't think you can. I think most importantly, first up, LinkedIn is the best place to do and to start creating, posts, a couple of posts a week, but on
Yes.
one strategic topic that you are really good at and you love.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question in terms of those strategic decisions versus visibility. You mentioned that, you can't be everywhere. You have to be strategic in where you position yourself. Can you elaborate on that and explain how executives can strike the right balance in making strategic decisions based on career goals?
Yeah. So, say, for example, you're in the tech industry. So a lot of my clients are in the tech space, and working through, what does that next step look like? Let's say you're in cybersecurity and you want to get a CIO role, or you that's sort of your next step. Then you'd be
Yes.
wanting to make sure that the content that you're putting out was about, not only the cyberspace, but also some leadership stuff around leading technology teams and really sort of putting content out that demonstrates you can do that next job.
Yes.
And also targeting it at the people that potentially can hire you. So CEOs should be really your audience.
Right.
And the industry in general. So you wouldn't be worrying about, whether you're positioning yourself for other industries or audiences. It's all about that sort of top line focus. So and I always like to think about it like this: what are the problems that CEOs who you would like to work for, how do they describe the problem you solve, and how can you address that in your content?
I like that. Yeah, then you're really delivering. And so when it comes to achieving credibility, how can you advise these executives on building and maintaining their credibility? And
Yeah.
especially when they're transitioning from one industry to another or from one role to another.
Yeah, and I've had a recent client who transitioned from one industry into the tech space, into a very new industry. And what I think is really powerful when you transition into another industry is not being and it's very normal for people to think, oh my God, I'm new in this industry. I don't know anything about this stuff. But that's where you can become a thought leader from a learning perspective. So it's like you're sharing your learnings rather than positioning yourself as an expert. And eventually, as you position yourself, as you share your learnings and your insights, you naturally become a thought leader in your industry because you are being consistent. You're putting out quality content. You're adding value to your industry, and you're being seen by the people that matter.
So from your experience, how significant is mentoring for senior executives? And do you integrate this into your SHINE framework?
Yeah, absolutely. I work, so I have my SHINE program, which takes leaders through how they can build their brand strategically. And within that, I mentor them each session. So each session we have, each fortnightly, we work together. And it's amazing because what happens is automatically people start noticing that you're starting to make a change and that you're becoming more visible. But also other things come up within that. So, we spend a lot of time talking about other parts that are at play within your brand, how people interact with you and how you navigate certain situations. And I think that's what comes from mentoring. That's what I love about mentoring, is having somebody there to listen, but that's also sort of completely out of the equation, doesn't know these people or these situations, but that's really got your best interest at heart as well.
Yes, I love that. Now, in these evolving times that we're in, with the rapid change in the corporate world, how can senior executives ensure that their personal brand remains relevant and updated?
So I believe there's a couple of things. One is to have visibility. So you want to be visible and you want to have a brand. So you want to be on LinkedIn. Absolutely, without a doubt, that's important. I believe putting content out and creating content, creating value. So that's really important. That's how you remain relevant. And so one of the things that I work with my clients on is very much around How do you stay relevant with the knowledge? So that's one of the best ways to demonstrate your relevancy, is by having current information at your hands. So, spend an hour or two every week keeping up on your industry information. So I say things like, is there a couple of podcasts you can listen to every week? Is there, have a subscription to Harvard Business Review. Make sure you've got Google alerts on your industry. So once you know what it is that you want to be known for, you're going to throw everything behind it. And that's how you show and demonstrate you're relevant in your industry, by really, knowing your stuff, knowing the latest research. And it doesn't take that long. And you get that added benefit if you can actually turn that into something that shares with your audience. So, you read the Harvard Business Review, you know what's going on, you've seen these new trends coming in, put it in a post, share it with your industry. And there you go, you're relevant and you're visible.
Now, from a perspective of a person of color, especially in the Australian environment, you are working a lot in the tech industry. How can people of color use their point of difference to get into organizations where they normally would not be seen?
I think it's about the visibility. So it's about sort of building a profile for yourself that comes before you. And this is what I suppose comes back to my main point, which was, make sure people know you, build those relationships with you, share your stories. I think I was listening to your story, Gertrude, which I was like, wow, gee, that's amazing. And I believe that's part of it. Like those stories, sharing those stories, letting people get to know you is just so important. And I believe also networking, strategically networking, meeting new people, building relationships of mutual benefit. They're the things that I would focus on. I would say that I occasionally have clients who, will say to me, how am I going to get into the corporate world? I'm like 60. And so for them, it's the same thing. It's about building your visibility, building connections, and
So give us an example, maybe a case study, a success story from one of your clients who preferably was trying to navigate the challenges of diversity in their career, and how your SHINE framework supported them on that journey.
Yeah, so I would say I would probably reference a client of mine who was transitioning from a very different organisation. So, she'd been at the C-suite, in a C-suite role, but she'd been made redundant, and she didn't want to stay in that area at all. So she had this really diverse career, really, really diverse career, successful but diverse, and wanting to move into the robotics area, and was, a big thing. Like they, because they're very sort of specific around, well, hang on, if you don't have this and you don't match that, we sort of, how do I fit you? And so what she did was, we got really clear on what it was she wanted to do, and how her experience married up with what was required in that industry, and how we could translate that and show, look, this experience matches that experience. And then we worked through things like, what does she want to be known for? And then we looked at, okay, well, what was the value proposition? Because really, it's not that different to, it's about how you describe it, how you tell the story behind it, in terms of what value she could bring to that new industry, and actually show that there was some parts of her experience that would really benefit that new industry. And we looked at networking was a really big one. So, and getting connected to people in groups within that industry, learning from those people. So networking as well, and building strategic relationships. And then those doors started to open a lot more naturally. But also putting one of the things that she did was put together like a bit of a plan around, this is what I can do. So she really pushed herself out of her comfort zone, and landed herself in an amazing job. She's now working in the space industry and has been for a couple of years.
Wow, that's inspiring.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. So what are your parting thoughts for our listeners today in terms of the area and the space that you or a specialist in?
Yeah. So I'm a strong believer in being out there. I've done it myself, and I know that it's hard initially. But, take time to reflect on where you want to go next. What is that step, and who needs to see you in order to achieve that? And then get really clear on what it is that you can talk to in your industry, that you know so well, that you could talk about it for hours and hours and hours. And if you think, if someone asks me that question one more time, I'm going to wrap my head. It's just they're the things that you should be sharing with the world. So yeah, don't let fear get in the way.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for coming online and sharing with us today. You come with a world of knowledge in this space.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is connecting you with some amazing people, professionals who can help take you from where you are to where you want to go. Sarah, what is your website? How can people get hold of you? What's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, my website's sarahmakris.com.au, and I'm also on YouTube as Career Success Coach, and I have a podcast as well called Career Success Coach, and I'm on LinkedIn, so Sarah Makris.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sarah. Have a
Pleasure.
fantastic day, everybody. I will be back again tomorrow. Have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thank you. That's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay